You never know. Absolutely. I don't have that. While we were walking, I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, well, that's why I was trying to. Yeah, that's why I was just like, that's why he said all that right. So I will keep that in mind for next time. I got dormant security detail. Amazing. Really good. Yep. Wow. Amazing. I learned something new today.
Everybody good? Ready? Well, thank you for coming, everybody. We appreciate it. You just heard the governor deliver a pretty rosy budget address. From our perspective, we think that when you look behind the curtain, you're going to see something that's a lot different than was projected today. You know, this budget continues to spend more money than the state takes in. In fact, over the Murphy administration, we've seen over a 60% increase in spending and an over 50% increase in taxes. And this budget continues along that narrative. So while the governor likes to talk about the state being stronger and fairer, when you look deep inside this budget, I don't think that's what you find. In fact, when you look at this budget, you'll see that, as the governor noted, an increase in the CBT. There are 140 school systems that will receive budget cuts, aid cuts, their aid. $130 million of money will be cut from our municipalities, and that's not to mention the 15% fare increase on New Jersey Transit, the toll increases that folks are going to face, payroll tax increases that are built in here, and not to mention the fact that folks are further behind as a result of tax creep when they pay their taxes every year. And we still have the highest property taxes in the nation. So the Republicans feel that we have a better way of doing things. We have, over the years, made suggestions during the budget process, put forth the different policy initiatives that have been ignored. And quite frankly, if you look back, history will prove that those initiatives and those policies and those suggestions have proven to be right and would have saved our residents millions of dollars if implemented. So we're looking for a seat at the table. We want a bipartisan, transparent budget approach. And if we have that here in New Jersey, everyone will do better, because that's the way government is supposed to operate. It's not supposed to operate on one-party rule and one party making the decisions. Because when you have that happen, that's why 140 school systems will get cuts to their aid. $130 million in municipal aid will be cut. And quite frankly, it'll be done based on political decisions. And that's not the way it should operate. We're looking for a seat at the table. We're looking to make this process open and fair for everybody, and to take some of the suggestions that we've made over time and implement them to save taxpayers across the board. So at this point, I'm going to introduce the Assembly Minority Leader, John DeMaio, say a few words on behalf of his caucus. John?
Thank you, Senator Bucco. This budget's the opposite of affordability. We need Republican leadership in New Jersey. Year after year, budget after budget, taxes go up. Nearly $20 billion in taxes since this governor took over, we've increased. And nothing has happened for the property taxpayers of New Jersey. Some $33.5 billion worth of property taxes are taken each year by municipalities across the state, and we get back a few crumbs, somewhere around 10% of that in Anchor, which already is becoming obsolete because of the rising inflation costs on New Jersey families. So again, additional school aid, no discussion with the schools as to you really need to use some of this aid to offset property taxes. Instead, they'll max out the property tax. Last year, 3.3% increase in property tax with a 2% levy cap because of exceptions, and costs are rising. But what do? We invent new programs, we go off on new tangents, and we don't get back to the basic needs of the state of New Jersey. Governor talked about debt, defeasance. He borrowed $4 billion that he didn't need to borrow, and has paid back a fraction of that $4 billion. It's like I borrow the money and then say I'm paying it back, but we didn't need to borrow it in the first place. It's ridiculous. Talk about affordability. The new threshold to get the senior freeze is an income of $163,000 a year. That's a high income to qualify for senior freeze. It does speak to affordability. There's a lot of families in New Jersey that are suffering as a result of inflation, of higher taxes, and the cost to just exist in New Jersey. But the most difficult tax that we have is the property tax. School districts have been cut again, 140 some districts. No child should have their district school taxes where you can't increase by the amount of money that the state's taking away from them. They should have been held harmless in a real world, and those schools should be funded because it hurts kids. And it's not, and they need to have a proper education no matter where they are in the state of New Jersey. There's and the thing with the governor's talked for months and months about having the corporate business tax expire, only to create a new tax, which is higher than the corporate business tax surcharge that recently expired. You're going to collect over $1 billion from this new tax, this new fee they call it. And by the way, we don't know if it'll expire or if it's permanent or what it is. And the corporate business tax that was brought in last year on that surcharge was somewhere in the $650 million range. So they're not cutting taxes, they're raising taxes and not taking care of the basic needs of New Jersey, like the education of children in some 140 districts. So we're going to continue to speak out on this budget. As the Senate leader said, we hope to be part of a real part of the process to come with some real solid answers and solutions for affordability in New Jersey and where we're going in the future. So with that, I'd like to turn the conversation over to the Senate Budget Officer, Senator O'Scanlan.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. So we heard what is a typical speech by a governor with a budget address saying all kinds of wonderful things about all kinds of wonderful things that this budget will do. But mark my words, history is going to judge this administration as one of tragically missed opportunities. If you look at the big picture, even in this budget, we're spending down our surplus by $2 billion. There was a lot of chest thumping last year. It was $8 billion. We're spending 25% of it down in 1 year, and we don't even really have any major revenue challenges. There's some minor ones out there, no question, but at that rate, it's gone in 4 years. And this administration has done nothing to build a long-term sustainable budget. All of these wonderful things the governor is claiming that we're doing could easily go away as soon as there's the quickest and most slight revenue downturn, never mind a major one. And there were huge opportunities here. We were flush with cash after the pandemic happened. We could easily reworked our school funding formula and potentially provided billions of dollars in savings, or close to a couple of billion at least. We could have gone in and done health benefits reforms that even labor was asking for. They could have saved hundreds of millions of dollars sustainable every year. Around pension reforms, the hybrid pension plan that we all spoke about in grand terms when the governor came into office on the tail end of the Christie administration, totally ignored. None of that has happened. And it is setting us up as soon as the pandemic money works its way through the system, the needlessly $4 billion borrowed money, we will face a budget hole bigger than the one that existed, that was looming when the governor came into office. It's a tragedy. And I do have to say, the governor said, very specifically, I made a note of it, that with this increase in school funding of $900 and some odd million this year, it's going to benefit every single school child and every single property taxpayer. That is blatantly, patently false. He's cutting aid to 140 districts. He has to say that with a straight face to the kids in those districts who are losing music, who are losing art, who are losing virtually all sports. It's a disaster that easily could have been avoided had we reworked the school funding formula over the past few years. And by the way, the school funding formula dates all the way back to 2007 and 8, 18, 19 years ago. It's a tragedy that we didn't take advantage of these opportunities and been left with this year and ongoing a budget that would be sustainable. Then you throw in the governor's claim to be cutting property taxes while at the same time slashing aid to municipalities by $130 million, $150 million actually. While all sounds rosy when you hear a governor's budget address, again, the legacy of this administration is going to be that of tragically squandered opportunities that we may never get back during the course of our lifetimes. It's a really sad thing, and certainly at least the school part with the cuts to those 140 districts, that needs to be undone. If this budget gets signed and that's not fixed, the headline needs to be almost half the school children in New Jersey and half the property taxpayers in New Jersey were screwed by this administration, this legislature. We should not let that happen. I'm going to now turn over the mic to the budget officer in the Assembly, Assemblywoman Munoz. Yes.
Kinder and gentler? Maybe. Thank you all. My colleagues certainly have summed up what our reaction is to this budget, and we can see that really this is not a budget that we're really fond of. This budget actually increases taxes on just about everybody. I mean, look, if you're looking at it, and what we don't see is like the family leave tax is going to go up. The temporary disability taxes are going up. These are taxes that are hidden, that aren't in the budget, but they are indeed going up, which are going to hurt the working and middle-class people of the state of New Jersey. If we talk about rebranding the corporate business tax and calling it a transfer fee. A fee is a tax. And this is, it was all painted as a rosy picture that it's going to be the corporations. But you know what? We're still increasing that money. We were applauded ourselves for eliminating the corporate business tax. Now we've reinstated the corporate business tax. And what is driving the businesses out of New Jersey is this corporate business tax. And since my colleagues did such a great job of summarizing everything else, let me talk about NJ Transit. NJ Transit is a $3 billion a year budget, of which the governor claims that if he doesn't fix this, it'll kill him if he doesn't fix it. I forgot how he put it. But you know what? We still haven't fixed it. We're going to depend on this transfer fee. But also, we have enough money in the budget to fund NJ Transit. We added $1.5 billion in legislative add-ons last year that are just for pet projects around the state for specific districts, areas of the state, not across the state. It doesn't collectively benefit the entire state, but just certain areas. But we could use that money to help NJ Transit. NJ Transit is depended upon by the working and middle-class people of the state of New Jersey, and this is a burden on them. We need to do better. The governor has not done better. So together, as the senator said, we have plans to make things better. We can look at the budget. We plan to do that. And we're planning to ask the tough questions during the budget season to put the feet to the fire of this administration and say, again, paint a rosy picture, be an actor up there and we're a pep rally and let's do a pep rally. But we have to really face the reality of how this is affecting the people, the working people of New Jersey, and what is driving them out of the state. People are coming in, but the people are also leaving this state in great numbers because it's unaffordable. And when we talk about a 3.3% property tax increase in the state of New Jersey, when we have a 2% cap, and then we talk about all these ways that we've decreased the property taxes on the residents of the state of New Jersey, we haven't done that. If you go up 3.3% and we still have the highest property taxes in the nation, you tell me how we've decreased the property tax burden on the people of the state of New Jersey. So together with my colleagues and with the members of our budget committees, we're going to be working to try to see what we can do to make you all very much aware of what's going on, to hold every single department's feet to the fire. We heard today that they're going to have a tight budget going forward, and they're going to look at ways to decrease money that they're spending. Let's make sure they do that, because it's not fair to the people, the working, middle class, and all the people of the state of New Jersey. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. I think the bottom line is that this budget represents more of the same. Continues to increase spending, continues to increase taxes, make it harder on our low and middle income families here in New Jersey, and that's quite frankly why people are leaving. And I think if you ask most people on the street whether or not they think they're stronger and fairer, New Jersey's been stronger or fairer to them in the last 6 years, I think you'll hear they don't believe they've seen that. And that's what this budget has not corrected. This is what this budget will continue to promote. More folks not being able to have the means to stay here on retirement. New Jersey, if you look at the increase in population around the country, New Jersey ranks amongst the highest, or the lowest, I should say, of people actually coming into the state. And that's a telltale sign of what these last budgets have done to the people in New Jersey. I'm happy to take any questions.
So, Senator, you and your colleagues have talked about wanting bipartisanship during this budget process. I think it would be fair to ask for a baseline. What is your definition of bipartisanship?
Well, we want to be able to have input into, as our budget officer said, the school funding formula. How much funding is going to go in to our school system in this budget cycle, right? How do you go back to Tom's River? How do you go back to Randolph? How do you go back to Jefferson Township that are losing millions and millions of dollars in school funding and say to them, well, look, it's stronger and fairer. I got to tell you right now, the kids in those school systems and the parents of those school systems, they don't think it's stronger and fair. So give us an opportunity to look at these numbers, to begin to create changes in the way the state's been operating. You know, the state should be operating as most people operate, right? Your reoccurring expenses should be covered by your reoccurring revenues, not by having to go to the surplus year after year to balance the budget. That's a cocktail for disaster. And that's where we're headed. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for the pandemic funding, we'd have been there long ago. So, you know, we want an opportunity. You know, just recently we put out an alternate proposal to the governor's debt defeasance plan. And I think after it was checked by most in the media, people agreed that our approach to debt defeasance would have provided a bigger savings to the state of New Jersey than the governor's proposal. Why? Because the governor chose to pay off debt that was coming due now rather than more expensive debt, which over the long term would have saved more money. But it freed up money in this budget cycle in order for him to have more money to spend. Those are the type of things that can make a big difference here in New Jersey.
And if I could just follow up on, there's another piece of that too. It comes at the end of the budget cycle where they huddle in their little room with the leaders of the majority and the governor and divvy up extra money, like $1.5 billion last year, last week, few days. We know nothing about it. We should just eliminate any unnecessary Christmas trees projects. I mean, even the former governor this week has come out and said we shouldn't do the Pompidou. We shouldn't spend the money on that. He's the only Democrat making sense in New Jersey right now to me, Governor McGreevey. But the reality is that last-minute spending doesn't need to happen. We have bigger priorities like children's education and other things we should be doing. I mean, really, if we don't start doing some serious work on property tax costs in New Jersey, it just spirals out of control.
You know,
year.
If you think about it, the $1 billion that the corporate business tax surcharge is going to provide to New Jersey Transit, if they wouldn't have spent that $1 billion last year in the final 24 hours of the budget process, they wouldn't have needed it this year. They would have had it to give to New Jersey Transit. David?
So I'm writing down that John DeMeo said that Jim McGreevey is the only person making sense.
Only Democrats.
He just, he,
any
Democrat.
He don't need to do the Pompidou, and he didn't say it.
He's endorsing him for mayor.
That's enough question, Lex.
So I have a two-part question, but they're really separate questions. The first one is, what should the process be for blowing up the school funding formula? How should that work? And B, last year, I remember in this very room, you guys were saying that surplus, $8 billion was too much. And now you're saying it's too little? What's a good surplus to have?
Well, look, we knew last year that the administration saw trouble on the horizon. I mean, we've been saying this for years, that it's coming. And they also figured out that they had a lot of money from the pandemic money from the federal government. So they jacked up the surplus in order to cover themselves as the bottom fell out of the budget. And that's not how to run your budget. You shouldn't be running your budget based on trying to create surplus or putting money in surplus. The budget should be run based on the revenues, recurring revenues, pay for recurring expenses. And if the revenues exceed expenses, well, then you got some extra money. But you shouldn't be balancing your budget year after year on a surplus because, as our budget officer indicated, in a bad time, that surplus is going to be gone quickly.
If I could, just real quick.
Go ahead.
David, it doesn't matter the size. And we could debate the size of the surplus, which we did last year. We would have left a little more money in taxpayers' hands, no question. It really isn't the size of it, it's the stability of it. If you are relying on $2 billion to balance your budget, that's a problem. I don't care if you started $2 billion or you started $10 billion. If $2 billion of it you're using to pay what is essentially a structural deficit, you got a problem.
And the school funding formula?
School funding formula, you actually don't have to blow it up, but you need the help of the Department of Education. Look, I've looked at it to try within my own office, and I do this because I know life. I create policy that really works comprehensively. It's really hard with the school funding formula to sort of do it on my own, even talking to some experts. And we put together a group of people who have some great ideas, but we need the help of the Department of Education because they have access to all the data that you really need to fix the school funding formula. You could modify it. Within a few weeks of concentrated discussion with the Department of Education folks and some other experts in the field, we could come up with tweaks to the school funding formula that would fix it long term.
So you
It's
don't
not
need a
that hard.
task force?
Sorry?
You don't need a task force?
I don't need a year's task force, no. Task force. No, within a few weeks of concentrated effort, you could fix the school funding formula.
Hey, I have a thing we laid out last year that would rework the entire program and mandate property tax cuts, and finally, take the responsibility of funding schools back to the state level, some of it away from the locals, but it would demand property tax cuts. Nothing. S2 shifted a lot of money around. After they were short on money and had higher enrollment, they raised property taxes as much as they could, and then you start paying them back, they still go to the max, and they raise property taxes with the extra money from the state. There's no control there to say, all right, you're above adequacy, you could cut property taxes, you must cut property taxes and send that back to a levy cut. We really need to do some fundamental reforms to school funding formula. I have a bill.
Senator Stanley, can we quote you on that having no life?
Absolutely. It's not as if that would be news to most people.
In order to be budget officer, you cannot have a life.
This is true. It's a prerequisite.
Sorry, Nancy.
I don't have a life either. You could quote me on that.
Senator Stanley, could you clarify what you said about $150 million lost in municipal aid? Are you tying that to the schools, or is there something else?
No, actually, that's municipal aid. There's the schools are a whole separate thing. And we're diving into it now. I suspect that they're clawing back what was an agreement both with the executive branch and the legislative branch to refund the energy receipts taxes, which are stolen from property taxes every year and have been for a long time. We suspect, we're not sure of this, that they're clawing back what we included last year, which is a damn shame because we shouldn't be doing that. We should be going in the other direction. And that would translate to a direct hit on property taxes.
Question about NJ Transit. So, the Democrats have posited this new fee of theirs as a way of, in somewhat of a fashion, permanently funding NJ Transit to a certain extent. You all seem to disagree with this, and so what exactly would your solution be to finding a permanent pot of money? And then the second part is, there's no way that this money can be guaranteed to go in to NJ Transit without a constitutional amendment. What are your thoughts on that?
We've had nearly $19 billion increase in revenue through taxes over the last 6, now 7 budget cycles. If you have $19 billion of revenue growth, you can find a way not to spend it somewhere else and put it in transit where it belongs, if that's where you really want to put it. It's about prioritizing what we should be doing versus what we want. Wants versus what we need to do. It could be done.
A permanent.
Yeah,
without
the revenue is up by some $18 to $19 billion, give or take a couple of pennies, right, Ross? Within that $18 billion, okay, 6 went to the pension. You still have $12 billion additional. There's money there that could be reappropriated to transit. Maybe they don't need everything that they're putting in there by this tax, but the reality is there's a way to do this if we had the discipline to prioritize what we need to do in the state of New Jersey and do what we should do to protect the transit riders and not spend it to other places. $1.5 billion the last day of the budget last year. That money's still in this budget. Most of that was one-shots. There it is.
And so do you all plan on voting against it, or do you?
Have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, look, we will, both of our budget committees I think, will vigorously review the budget, question the commissioners and the various departments that come in and agencies to see whether or not there's some better way to do things. And that's why we're saying, give us a seat at the table. Give us an opportunity, transparently, open to the public and to the press. Here's our suggestion. This is what we're saying. We think you could do better and save the taxpayers money. That hasn't happened. And quite frankly, not only have we been shut out of the process, but you've been shut out of the process.
The governor said in his speech, this is quoted directly, "To ensure we continue spending wisely and our state remains steady in stormy waters, I am respectfully asking our legislative partners to do their part as well." So kind of, balancing off what you just said, you need a seat at the table. Do you have any response to this? Because it sounds like he's maybe inviting the legislature to the table, but what does that sound like to you?
Listen, we get invited all the time, but when we get to the table, nobody's there.
Yeah, right.
It's us. So, I can assure you that we have a very talented budget committee, headed by a very talented budget officer, Mr. O'Scanlan, Senator O'Scanlan, who's here, and the same thing on the assembly side. Every one of the members have been involved in crafting budgets for a long time in their respective fields. And, we're happy to have an opportunity to have input and to make suggestions and to have a dialogue. I think if that happens, everybody wins.
I interpreted that statement of the governor, that he asked his department heads to cut back. And he was talking to the same Democrats that came to him the last days of the budget last year. Don't be coming in here asking for $1.5 billion again. That's my interpretation of that. And if that's what he meant, I'm all in.
And I think we have to also remember that of that $1.5 billion in legislative add-ons at the end, which, again, as all of us have stated, none of us knew where that was. We didn't know about it until days after we had voted on the budget. It didn't come out to us, it didn't come out to you. And if you looked at it, 95% of that money went to districts that weren't represented by our side of the aisle. So 5% went to districts that had Republican representation. 95% of it went to the other side. So is that fair to the public and the general public? We say no. And we say we don't know. Again, days later, we found out where the money was going. We have no idea because they don't tell us at all. And that's why we don't have a seat when we talk about a seat at the table, we've done our homework, we've done our work, but then these numbers are stuck in there without our knowledge at all. And they call it, Christmas tree items because they call it legislative add-ons because it doesn't sound so offensive. But again, these are gifts to people who they represent.
Last question. Anybody? No.
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you think the Democrats will be able to follow through with the Stay NJ program?
No.
No.
That's a simple answer. No. No. I mean, if you look ahead to the projections, there is, well, first of all, this governor is not going to have to deal with it, right? It's going to be left to the next governor to finalize that program. So I think it's going to be very difficult to try to find that money without raising another tax to implement it. And in fact, when you look at the committee that was formed under that legislation, that's what they're looking at right now. So, hold on to your wallets.
And a provision of that is that we have to have a 12% budget surplus. We are every fiscal year, we're spending down $2 billion of our budget surplus. This year, we're at 11% budget surplus. Now, that may sound like a good number, but it doesn't meet the provisions of the legislation. So therefore, even if we were to fund it this year, we couldn't fund it because we have only 11% budget surplus. So by 2026, that budget surplus we expect will be even less than that. So there's built-in ways for it to blow up, let's put it that way. And as Senator Bucco said, we're gonna have another governor. This was, put out, if they really wanted to do it, they should have done it last year. But, it was proposed, we have an election, and, the people I know in and around town where I live, they are looking forward, they're like, they can't wait for this to happen. But, that's unfair to let the people think that they're actually gonna get this. When the reality is, will we be able to afford it? Most likely not.
I can outline the way it goes. Last year, there was 100 million in the budget for it. This year, he's got 200 million. Next year, in FY '27, this is 26, there has to be 600 million. That's the current governor's last budget. And then the new governor's first budget has to have the 1.2 billion. So every year, it's doubling. And it gets more difficult each year to climb that hill. But, so this governor has to fund half of it to start it in January of '26, but the tougher lift comes later. So it's a mountain to climb. It's like
And that
that.
1.2 billion is in 2024 dollars, not 2026 dollars. Am I
So
right
it's,
about
yeah,
that?
the 2027 budget
Yeah.
has to be double. So it was a great promise for 2023.
Would you all be willing to negotiate percentage down?
Have to see how it fits in the whole package.
I mean, the committee's actually talking about that. They're saying that 12% budget surplus maybe is too high for the program. No, the committee that was established under that legislation. Yeah.
Agree.
Listen, if they're supposed to submit a report, until they do, it's kind of hard to say whether or not we'd agree to what they're proposing.
What is that report? Is that like a public
I don't know.
report? Or is
It's
that
a, it's a recommendation, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
So away.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
So if you need to look back, well, I know you're recording it, if you need to look back,
Oh, yeah.
you're welcome to. Hi, I'm Margo, I'm with the Assembly Republicans. I don't know if you had a